Today, the lights are bright.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series.
The pressure is real.
Shot clock at 10. Murray against Davis. Lobs down low for Sharp, and he has his shot rejected by Murray Boyle. He just blocked the shot of a 7'5" human. Are you kidding me?
And the stories are bigger than the scoreboard.
And South Carolina has won the national championship.
From the biggest plays.
Up in the pocket, gonna run inside the 20, 10. Lenore Sellers going left side, 5. Touchdown, Carolina. Touchdown. Touchdown, Lenore Sellers.
To the toughest calls.
In the pocket, rolling right side, throws underneath. Is the ball picked up?
Got it.
It is. The Gamecocks have got it on a turnover. They shut it down at Death Valley.
To the moments everybody will be talking about tomorrow morning.
Michigan at the 41. What a hit. Ball's free. On the ground. South Carolina deserves to have it, and they do.
This is the podcast that brings you inside the game. Now, here's your host, Keith Allsep. And this is Gamecock Pod Live.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod Live for August the 18th, a special day, a special show, as in just a few minutes I will play an extensive interview that I recorded yesterday afternoon with JC Shurburtt from thebigspur.com and Inside the Gamecocks. JC's second appearance on the show this month. In the first part, we previewed South Carolina's offense. I asked him to come back to do the defense, and so we talk about Saturday afternoon or Saturday night scrimmage, the injury situation at wide receiver, and then we move after a couple of other notes about the scrimmage into an in-depth look at South Carolina's defensive unit, which in a lot of ways is very similar to 2024. All right, so today's show, as always, brought to you by the award-winning full-service catering company servicing the greater Charlotte, Fort Mill, Rock Hill, Lancaster area. I'm talking about Nana's Porch. Nana's Porch is your go-to for all your catering needs, whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a rehearsal dinner, a corporate event, a birthday, wedding anniversary, or engagement celebration. Maybe it is a breakfast meeting with a church group or in your office, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. And it really doesn't matter if it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Nana's Porch has got you covered. So go to the homepage, nanasporch.com. That's NANASPORCH.com. Get in touch with my good friend Chris Payne. I strongly urge you to support this Gamecock-owned and operated business, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. They will work with you to customize the menu that you want and bring in a delicious spread that will be having all the folks in your event asking, where in the world did you get this delicious food? Nana's Porch, delicious food, unparalleled, second to none, customer service. nanasporch.com. You'll love it. I guarantee it. All right, before we get into our extensive interview with JC Shurburtt, a few news notes. The AP Top 25 came out yesterday. The SEC led the way with 9 teams and 5 of the top 10. The Big Ten had 8 teams, 3 of the top 10. The Big 12 had 4 top 25 teams. The ACC, 3 25 teams and 1 top 10 team. And then Notre Dame, the independent, comes in as a top 10 team. Running down the poll, Ohio State 1, Oregon 2, Georgia 3, Notre Dame 4, Texas 5, Indiana, the defending national champs 6, Miami 7, Texas A&M 8, Ole Miss 9, Oklahoma 10, LSU 11. Other notables, Alabama at 13, Southern Cal at 14, Michigan at 16, Penn State with first-year head coach Matt Campbell at 18, SMU at 19, Tennessee at 20, and Missouri at 25. Clemson finished just out of the top 25. They are 26. Florida is 27th. I mentioned those because South Carolina plays both of those teams. South Carolina tied at 31. South Carolina's breakdown of top 25 opponents. They play number 3 Georgia at home in November, number 8 Texas A&M at home, and number 20 Tennessee at home. They are at number 10 Oklahoma, at number 13 Alabama, and then they also play at Clemson and at Florida. So we'll see. Last year, the Gamecocks were in this poll, and after week 2, South Carolina was number 9 in the nation, and it was certainly a short-lived stay in the top 10 for the Gamecocks. Todd McShay, formerly of ESPN, now with the Ringer, yesterday on a YouTube show, he exclusively revealed his top 10 players for the NFL draft for 2027, dominated by the SEC. But Dylan Stewart coming in at number 7, Lenora Sellers coming in at number 6. Todd McShay, very bullish on Lenora Sellers, says he is, and it's not even close, the most physically gifted quarterback in this draft class, can create better than any other quarterback in the class, and could be the most special quarterback in this class. And McShay said if South Carolina's supporting cast is better, in particular the offensive line and at wide receiver, which I believe they are, that he would not rule out Lenora Sellers being the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. Ohio State wide receiver Jeremiah Smith is number 1. Oregon quarterback Dante Moore is 2. Notre Dame cornerback Leonard Moore 3. Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambliss 4. Number 5 quarterback Arch Manning, then Sellers and Stewart. Number 8 Miami wide receiver Malachi Toney. Texas wide receiver and Auburn transfer wide receiver Cam Coleman, and then Texas defensive end Colin Simmons comes in at number 10. All right, so late last night, a Twitter account that I follow closely, someone who is very knowledgeable in the women's basketball world, Raul000, tweeted that he is hearing that former Sacred Heart and Texas A&M point guard Nasira Pryor, 5'3", native of Baltimore, Maryland, who averaged a little over 16 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, 7 assists per game, and I want to say 3.6 steals. She was second team All SEC and joined Rory Harmon and Raven Johnson on the SEC All Defensive team. She is one of the players named in the suit to get a 5th year of eligibility restored. And so a couple things are going to have to happen. And exchanging messages with a source in the middle of the night, Nasira Pryor will come to South Carolina and play the 26-27 season if she gets a waiver from the SEC. She is also a protected member of this class lawsuit, which is supposed to ensure her eligibility. I'm not saying with 100% certainty it's going to happen, but if the waiver is approved, which I don't know if it will be, I did bring her up last week on Gamecock Pod Live on Thursday morning with Lulu Kesson from the Greenville News and the USA Today Network. As someone potentially who could be a player that South Carolina would be interested in. And so we will see how this lawsuit continues. We'll see how it turns out, and we will see if Nasira Pryor, who, even though she's 5'3", very scrappy, very quick twitch, watching some of her play from the summer and at Texas A&M at Sacred Heart, someone who I think would be a welcome addition, even as maybe not even as a starter, but someone in the rotation that can come in and give you 15 to 20 to 25 minutes a night, depending on the matchups. So this will be something interesting to track. South Carolina does have an open scholarship with the transfer of Maddie McDaniel, and Dawn Staley has zeroed in on Nasira Pryor, and so we will see how that proceeds. We'll see how it develops, I guess is the best word to say. All right, so I sat down yesterday afternoon and recorded this extensive interview with J.C. Shurburtt. We opened by talking about the injuries to Jaden Sellers and Jaden Gibson from last week. Gibson injured late in the week, and then Sellers Saturday night during the scrimmage. Shane Beamer characterized both injuries as non-contact. We talk about the offensive line a little bit. We kind of get into some of the news coming out of the scrimmage, and then we take a deep dive into South Carolina's defense. So here is my interview with J.C. Shurburtt from yesterday afternoon. And we are here with J.C. Shurburtt from thebigspur.com and Inside the Gamecocks to continue talking Gamecocks preseason. Last time J.C. was on, we focused on the Gamecock offense. Today we're going to focus on the defense. But J.C., fresh off of the first scrimmage, number one, obviously not good injury news at wide receiver with a pair of Jadens. Hopefully it's only Jaden related as far as wide receiver injuries go this year. Jaden Daniels Jaden Gibson. I guess for some reason I'm wondering why that dude wants LSU to retire his number and not allow somebody else to wear it and get NIL money. But Jaden Gibson, often injured at Oklahoma, and the hits just keep on coming for him as he's injured late last week prior to the scrimmage. I texted you as soon as I got that, and you were able to confirm. But then Saturday night after the scrimmage, breaking yesterday morning, Jaden Sellers, the younger brother of Lenore Sellers, tearing an ACL for the second time. He missed his junior year in high school with that injury. And so, JC, do you know, was it the same leg? Was it a different leg? Has there been any clarification on that?
No, not as far as the leg goes. So I don't know. I wish I did. That was probably something good. I do know they were Gibson and Sellers both were non-contact injuries, which happens. Talking to Mike Morgan earlier today on the show, he brought up a good point. Players are bigger and everybody's gotten bigger and, than they used to be and faster than they've ever been. But one thing that hadn't grown is ligaments. And so sometimes the inertia gets to you and stuff like that. And everybody's wired differently, built differently. And you hate it for Jaden. I think that the, initial reaction would probably be you got a lot of depth at receiver, and you do. Sometimes when Carolina or any team has had an injury to a starter, and I do believe he was set to start. He was the best receiver in the spring, and in this offense, you could see a guy like him doing a ton of damage. But he, so when you replace a starter in the past, it's been a situation where maybe you don't have a guy talent-wise that's as good. It's like when Marcus Lattimore got hurt, obviously Carolina thankfully had Brandon Wilds first year, and then the next year you had Wilds and then a little bit of Mike Davis. Kenny Miles was still there, but they weren't Marcus Lattimore, right? There's a significant drop. And then in other situations, like, I don't know, back in the 06 season, had Captain Munderland and Carlos Thomas gotten hurt, I don't know who they'd have played at corner. If Steven Garcia had gotten hurt in 09, Reed McCullum or Aaron Hillary was going in the game. That was it. That's all you had. This is not like that situation. There's a lot of guys that are really good athletes that are capable receivers that can go in. Where it is an issue is the facts are, taking recruiting rankings and potential and everything else out of it, Pup Sellers was the best freshman receiver on the team last year, production-wise. In the games he played, he produced. And there may be reasons for that beyond just he's a better receiver, but I think he had a higher floor. He dominated his senior year, led South Florence to the state championship game. And sometimes those guys, and for all you Jazavian Currents fans and Julian Walker fans out there, this is good news. Some of those kids that dominate the state playoffs in our state, they end up coming in a little bit college ready because they're used to the pressure and the moments and stuff. And the moment was not too big for him. So you lose all of that production. And the whole thing with the receiving core is this. Yes, they're talented. Yes, there's some dudes that can be dudes. They haven't done it yet. And so you lose that certainty, because what if some guys drop the ball? What if some guy, you're dealing with a lot of people there. So I do think it's a big loss. Is it a situation where they're just going to be limited at slot receiver? No. You've got Mazio Bennett, and then you got a guy that's a freshman that I'd like to apologize to all the Gamecock fans out there. I missed this one. Had I dug in on him a little bit more when they got his commitment, you remember Carolina was losing Smoke Watkins and Smoke Matthews and Tamarian Watkins and JB Shabazz, and everybody's kind of, and then Sequel Patterson's kind of committed. Oh, he's reclassifying. It's like Donovan Murph or Jordan Gidron, whoopee. Then he didn't come in early. And so nobody's talking. They're talking about the other guy, and so I think I just missed him. I went back and watched this film. I watched his basketball film. eat your heart out, Bruce Ellington, because that guy could play both. And he's a people throw the term dog around a lot. That guy's a competitor, and he's an elite athlete and a great football player. So I think it opens up more of an opportunity for him to get on the field at least early to see what he can do. You don't know if it's going to translate into a game or not at this level, but I'd sure like to find out. And so, Lex Cyrus is a player Shane Beamer mentioned in an interview with Wild Bill Gunner the other day. Very fast guy, slot guy. So there's potential, but at the same time, you lose Pup, and you lose that certainty. Now, on the opposite end, Jaden Gibson was not a certain thing. He'd had a history of injuries. He hadn't played in 2 years. The sad thing about it is you see him take the field in the practice video, and that young man was fired up. He's been through a lot academically. Graduated from Oklahoma in May. Had some other issues out there. Plus, he's been hurt. And my understanding was he was really having a good few of practices. He's somebody they don't really have at 6. Nick Harbor's 6'5", 6'6", but he's a lot like a gigantic Troy Williamson in a lot of ways. This Gibson's a little more like Mike Williams, T. Higgins-ish, Sidney Rice-ish, but faster in a straight line. The jump, those kind of pogo stick guys. And, Malik Clark's kind of that guy. Donovan Murph's a shorter version of that guy. Sequel can go up and get it, but they didn't have that guy. And so that's, I don't want to call it a luxury item, but, it would have been nice to have had him. So it's not an insignificant loss, but, for a guy that's had a history of injuries that, it's more like you just feel bad for him. Because you don't know what his football career, where it's going to go, especially with the new rules and stuff. So that just sucked. But Carolina just moved forward. Everybody has injuries. I wouldn't want to be Tennessee right now when their one good safety they have is out for the year. It happens everywhere. And these were non-contact, so there's nothing you can do about them.
Yeah, it's a tough break for sure, but if there is a position where South Carolina can withstand a couple of injuries, it is at wide receiver. If you just go by traditionally a 3 wide receiver set, you could have Nick Harbor, Jordan Gidron, and Malik Clark at one spot in the slot. Like you mentioned, Mazio Bennett, Sequel Patterson, and Lex Cyrus. And JC, you were not the only one that was dismissive of Patterson's opportunities to get on the field. And then, to me, you got a really intriguing battle going at that other outside spot with DJ Black, Donovan Murph, Nitro Tuggle. And is Nitro Tuggle a guy that could potentially move into the slot and play?
I think he's got the skill set to do it. Because he's kind of elusive, bouncy, wiry. He's got some wiggle to him. Yeah, he's absolutely a guy that can play slot. And that that's in a 3 wide receiver set. Well, one thing we all know is that we're going to see a lot of different formations. You're going to see a lot of different looks out of it. So, he is a guy skill set wise. If you're looking for somebody to kind of master that position, I think that, he could do it. And Black and Murph obviously have made their share of plays along with Nitro at that other outside spot. So, and it is a war. That's a heck of a 3. And DJ Black's the surprise, that just because he was a walk-on here several years ago doesn't mean he hasn't been. Donovan Murph's quote in an interview with 1801 that he did about it, he said, "I didn't realize he was that cold." I was like, yeah, he is cold. DJ did in the scrimmage the other night. DJ Lenore and Sellers and Black have really got a good connection. And Black's like listed 6'2", 205. He looks 6'4", 190 though. He looks taller and leaner than he is. He's not like built like Deebo Samuel, like a running back. He's a taller, leaner looking guy. Really, Chapman High School, man, Spartanburg County. So that's a war, and I think all 3 of those guys will play and produce this year. And I do think it may be coming that they move some of them around to different spots.
I mean, I agree. I've been told not to be surprised if Nick Harbor lines up in the slot. Kendall Briles is a matchup guy that they may move him all over the field. Plus, at this point, I don't know that you can't discount that theoretically Harbor, Black, Murph, and Tuggle could be your top 4 wide receivers, talent-wise.
No, there's no question. I mean, and a lot depends on the freshman we mentioned earlier, I think.
Yes.
Because that guy just does some stuff that, but no, it's a situation where I agree. And you don't ever want, we're dealing with a position like receiver or O-line where you got different positions, but you could slide a guy from left guard to right guard to optimize or something. You never want to have your 3 best at one spot. We've seen that movie around here. Mike Furry and Kendall Briles probably aren't going to do that. I'm very intrigued by what you said about Harbor in the slot, though, because I think that him matching up against a safety or linebacker is fundamentally different than a corner that's trying to cover him and be crafty and all that. And Nick's just speed, so it's almost like having a split tight end type of advantage out there. And that could be, I'd be surprised if that wasn't something they explored. So, but I think, like I said, from a talent standpoint, they'll be fine. You hate losing Pup because he's proven, and you hate losing Gibson on a personal level, but also because when you're looking for diversity and all that in your receiving core, which you need, he's a guy they don't really have anybody like him. So,
well, it'll certainly be intriguing to see how it shakes out here 2 weeks from Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be here before you know it. So, JC, quickly before we transition to the defense, just your thoughts on the intel coming out of the first scrimmage. I know it's a lot different than it has been. Kendall Briles is Shane Beamer's 4th different offensive coordinator, 5th if you count Mike Bobo, who never coached a game under Beamer. But Clayton White's been here the whole time, and he really hadn't had a hard time stopping these offenses in the preseason, but a little bit different on Saturday night from what we're hearing.
It was I started really digging in at 2007 when we started the Big Spurs. This is my 20th first Gamecock scrimmage as someone other than somebody that just reads it. Keith, the first scrimmage in the fall, Spurrier, Muschamp, B-Mac, Kurt Roper, Marcus Satterfield, whoever. The defense is always dominated. I mean, and then you go into the season, it gets fine. And there's reasons for that. The defense is pinning its ears back, taking the fight. The offense, usually, whether it's a good system or not, they're getting it together. They're still learning their assignments. The line's learning their assignments, that kind of thing. You're working personnel packages. It's tough. It's tough on an offense, especially when the defense hadn't been hitting anybody and they're ready to knock your block off. But the 2 times it did not happen that way that I remember distinctly was 2014, and we saw what happened to that defense. We were all hopeful, but that was a good offense. And then 2020, when that wasn't a good offense, but nobody was playing defense that year. Everybody just kind of checked out of defense. So that was and Mike Bobo's probably dialing it up a little bit in those things. We know Bobo's a good play caller, but so normally this would be a red flag about the defense because the offense went out. I was told, 6 plays right down the field a long time. It was what you're accustomed to seeing from some of these high-powered offenses. The offensive line protected. Lenore's had time. I was told it was almost like he said he didn't act this way, but he's like, I bet he was surprised, shocked even that he had a clean pocket. Now, this offense is designed to get the ball out quick. Obviously, you're not doing 7-step drops and waiting. But it was it was refreshing to hear that, because what it tells me is, number one, the offensive line is gelled a little bit. The group they have out there now, because that's a good defensive line they're going against. It tells me, number two, Lenoris knows the offense and knows where to go with the ball. Number three, it tells me that this scheme is exceptionally difficult to scheme up. Clayton White's mentioned it about Tennessee not being fun to stop and Ole Miss not being fun to stop. Same stuff. And then number four, that of all those systems out there, you just happen to have Michael Corleone as the Michael Corleone of this system as the play caller. And I was also told this, that it wasn't just the tempo, that Kendall Briles actually is really, really gifted at dialing up plays. See, and that's a different thing than just going fast all the time. So, yeah, man, it was encouraging. It did not happen the whole night. The defense certainly rebounded, and that's the first thing I asked was about the defense. So, what does this mean, the defense? Because I got kind of worried. This is unprecedented. Like, no, they responded, shut them down. They both. It was a kind of a heavyweight fight, which I can imagine at some of these schools that are loaded on both sides of the ball. That's kind of how it is. Maybe not in a first scrimmage, but I do think if you want to take away a little bit negative on the defense about it, is that, like a lot of teams, when you get a team that's good at tempo, that gives you a lot of things to stop, and you don't know where the ball's going, and you got to go fast. That's something to watch for when against a Mississippi State or a Tennessee this year defensively, obviously. But I mean, every D coordinator has an offensive coordinator. It's a pain in the ass to stop. I mean, Ellis Johnson could not stop Bobby Petrino. Stop everybody else. Right. Bobby Petrino would just, that guy, on a motorcycle, just chilling. How cool is it he's coaching with Belichick, by the way? I'd keep Jordan, what's her name, away from him.
Yeah, I think they're the most dysfunctional program in the country.
Jeez, boy, that's something. But no, so that's fine. But I always told the defense, because I was like, worried about it. He's like, don't worry about the defense. I mean, they said they're really confident on that side of the ball. But it's just refreshing to even in a scrimmage, to maybe have a functional offense that you're hoping just gels at the right time. That's maybe gel a little bit right now, then they can fine tune and get creative and go attack. I think I've always been intrigued by this type of system with the quarterback Carolina's got in Sellers. And I still am. And then Cutter Woods had a fantastic day throwing the ball too, from what I'm told. So good for the offense to give those guys some confidence, and a very veteran and mature offensive line in some ways, and a younger one in others. Give them some confidence too, because I'm pretty sure they're tired of hearing how much they suck when only one of them was here last year.
That's right.
These are grown ass men. These guys that are in their 20s and 23, 24. They get here and they're like, everybody's just beating us up, man. We weren't a part of that, So I'm pretty sure they're sick of it, and so good for them. And one more thing about the offense is, I was told too, like, confirmed what we thought. Randy Clements and Jason Smith have been outstanding coaching this time. It's noticeable. And this was somebody who's been at Carolina for a while that's kind of noticed the difference. And when you watch the clips, Jack Veltri has some up on his X account from some of the infamous Randy Clements drills. Those guys are moving around a little faster than they were in the spring. Just from an evaluation standpoint, you could tell they're a little quicker, a little leaner. It's not bad. Physically, there's some movement there too. And so, I'm trying not to be overly encouraged after, I think this is my 41st Gamecock football season. So I'm trying not to do that, but you have to admit there's some hope there.
No doubt. So let's transition to the defense. As I said, unlike the offense, you've had Clayton White there the entire time, Torian Gray the entire time. Travian Robertson has become entrenched at his position. Sterling Lucas leaves in the middle of the night for LSU, and to his credit, Clayton White, Shane Beamer moved quickly to secure Deion Barnes who's done a hell of a job at Penn State. So you've really got players that are entrenched in the system, but at the same time, with the number of players you brought in, the system has the flexibility and the simplicity for those guys to be able to get it. And so let's start with the defensive end room. I refuse to fall in line with the people that are calling it something else now, because edging is something you do in your yard by the sidewalk.
Guitars for you too.
Yeah.
The edge.
So obviously Dylan Stewart still out. Don't know the timetable. With him out, I would imagine I've heard positive things about Julian Walker coming out of the first scrimmage, Caleb Herring, Anthony Addison. You know, once you add Stewart, I'd say those may be the first four. We did get our first Quay Dodd mention last week in the player interviews, and then George Wilson, who originally committed to Will Muschamp and the Gamecocks, and then when Muschamp was fired, decommitted, went to Florida State, bounced around. He came back last year, tore his ACL late in preseason camp. South Carolina has the numbers, and they have talented guys, but just not a lot of guys that have played a whole lot of football at that position. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was asked earlier today about positions that they don't need injuries, and corner and edge came up. And Dylan, we'll see how that situation plays out. I'm almost tired of talking about it, because if you say, oh, he's going to be back, and then he's not, people are mad. If you say, well, just leave it open-ended, then people think that he's not going to be out. There's people attacking his character, comparing him to Juice Wells. There's people that expect him to be back for the opener. And I'll tell you right now, unless he's just 100% for like a week and can do everything, he's not playing against Kent State. Probably not playing against Towson. I wouldn't do it. I mean, would you? I mean, Jacarius Peak, maybe Peak, yes.
Yeah.
Because it's offensive line. You got to gel. A guy like Dylan, where even if he doesn't play in a game until Alabama and you put him in on third down, it's going to be the same. There's no learning curve there for him. It's just, and with a back too, I wouldn't risk it. But taking Dylan out of it, I like the next three. I think the next three, almost Dylan being out was a godsend for Anthony Addison and Julian Walker, because they got a ton of reps. I mean, it wasn't just Dylan that was out. Quay Dodd was out. Kobe Saki-Pra was out. George Wilson was out. Beamer was talking that they didn't have a whole lot of edge players to practice with. And so I do like that group. I think Julian Walker, it's kind of funny because, I heard this at the beginning of his recruitment when he burst on the scenes. And then a friend of mine that coached against him was saying, he probably just needs to fill out a little bit. Lo and behold, he's the heaviest edge on the team, right now. 6'6", 2, and he looks it, and I've heard the big thing he does, he's a very fast learner, and he's good against the run. Sometimes young ends don't, that part of it, they kind of have to learn. I keep getting asked for a player comparison, so I came up with one. Kayvon Thibodeau would be the comparison there. And some people may be like, he's the number one player in the country. Well, Julian was 15th, and there's not that much difference, right? Sometimes that 15th guy ends up being number one. But the build and the athletic, like what he can do and the size and all that, because he's hard to kind of pin down. Because you say Devin Taylor, but Devin Taylor was a taller, leaner kind of guy. A Myles Garrett's more of like your 265-ish, 6'4.5", little thicker guy. The closest build wise and skill set wise would be Thibodeau. And then Anthony Addison, was a player they really liked last year. He had some good moments, kind of a freshman, kind of some freshman things. But from when he was at Sumter, everybody's always thought he was just a hell of a natural football player. And he had a really good spring as well. I actually think, just kind of going on track record and considering Dylan Stewart did not start against against Old Dominion in 24, I actually think if there's no Stewart against Kent, Herring and Addison may be the guys. Maybe Walker, but sometimes they won't throw a true freshman out there at the beginning. But I like those three. So you need a fourth without Dylan, and George Wilson as a situational pass rusher, Chris Clark or Wes Mitchell one. So I read both those guys, and sometimes I don't get them confused as people, but I get them confused as far as what I read. But one of those guys on Gamecock Central watched him move around yesterday, because like with Jordan Strong, you remember he came back, wasn't really the same guy. Well, George Wilson's moving around just fine. I know last year he was in their plans. He had great scrimmages before they blew out the ACL. Drew Collins, Landon Collins' brother, is another player. I think people are kind of forgetting about him because he's listed at 6'2", 236 on the roster. Like, give him the inch. So because people don't talk about 6'2" ends that are below 250. They will talk about 6'3" ends that are above whatever. And I think he and Anthony Addison are the same size. So Addison's listed at 6'3", 6'4". But that's a guy, that could factor in as well. Kobe Saki Pra is probably a year away unless he's just been really good. And then Quay Dodd's a guy too. Now that's a bigger guy. He's kind of like his cousin Kevin, that could factor as well. So somebody out of that group of guys needs to be like the fourth, and when Dylan comes back, the fifth. And they need to stay healthy here, definitely. I mean, we saw in 2023 what happens when you don't have healthy edges and good edges. That was bad. That was one of the bad parts of that team nobody really talked about. But you had a hobbled Jordan Strong and Tyreek Johnson out there, and Brian Thomas Jr. 2 years before he was a big producer. And that just was not ideal compared to the next year, obviously. So, but I like it. Caleb Herring, very mature guy, has emerged as a leader. Really surprising to me, Keith, when you look at his build, and he talks about it too. He's like, some people think I'm a wide receiver when they see me. You wouldn't think this guy would be good against the run, but I heard he's absolutely fantastic against the run. And that's the key for me. That's one of the things that's really good about Kyle Kennard. We talk about the sacks all we want. But, boy, you ran that little jet sweep to Kyle Kennard's side. That's your bahunkus, sir. Your bahunkus. And so very, very happy to hear he's good against the run. I think that's very important, and looking forward to seeing him play.
No doubt. So probably sticking with the defensive line and now moving over to Travian Robertson's room, which is crowded because Travian's big and they're all guys, I want to apologize for this. It looks like big, and there's a bunch of them, 9 scholarship defensive tackles. Shane Beamer's been on record. They'll play at least 6 you start with the notorious GBD, Gabriel Brownlow Dindy, former 5-star, transferred in last year. I mean, I watched the film of the defensive line group moving around in practice. I mean, all these guys look like a $1 million, but Dindy, 6'3", 310. Probably the other starter will be Tomiwa DeRozier, who is, he's been a free agent every year in college. He's moved on. He's well-traveled. He's been in a lot of systems. He's played a lot of football, most recently at Illinois for Brett Bielema. Troy Pikes returns. I mean, the last time we saw him was in that Clemson game. They couldn't block him. Kelby Collins comes in, the big brother of Drew Collins. And JC, I meant to ask this. In the event that there is no Dylan Stewart, could we see Kelby Collins slide to that defensive end spot? Because when Clayton White was asked about him at media day, he said, well, he's a big defensive end that can slide inside and play 3 technique. Is that foreshadowing perhaps for things to come?
It was interesting. He had a really good scrimmage. And he's been laying down some grown man vibes since he's been in Columbia. Won an award, he's very focused. He was either freshman all SEC or freshman all American at Florida his first year. Then they slid him inside, and that did not work well at the time. And he left, went to Alabama. Alabama, he's kind of an outside guy in a three-man front, odd front role player. But I heard he had a good scrimmage, so I asked specifically, inside or outside? Inside. So good, because he's playing that game now. Can they? Yes. And I think if there was, and I think they'll experiment with it the first couple of games, because, you look at, Tomiwa DeRozier has basically been a starter since he stepped on campus. They love this guy. And I do, after listening to his interview, because I was kind of wondering, I remember he's a Travian Robertson type of recruiting story, because he was a 240-pound end out of high school and he grew into a tackle. After listening to him, he just owned it. Hey, look, man, I just embraced the fact I've been to 5 schools. He's like, there's reasons I left all of them. I do wish I'd have maybe stuck around early, but I should have listened to my parents, but that's okay now. I'm here now. And the reason he left Illinois is the coordinator left and I think his strength coach left. So they had some relationship turnover there that allowed him to come to Carolina. But he had a fantastic scrimmage. I know he was one of the guys that was sitting out, but I'm told that's just kind of a bump or bruise. And I don't remember who said it. Somebody, Clayton White maybe, said Tomiwa was a cross between TJ Sanders and Tonka Hemingway.
That's right.
Yes, I was in the interview with Whit Merrifield and Pat DeMarco.
Hit and stick.
That, yeah. Okay, so I'll take that, Keith. I'll take that.
Absolutely. And
but then you doesn't stop there, because you got Tomiwa, you got Troy Pikes, you got Kelby Collins. At kind of they call it the 3 technique. They got noses and 3 techniques. Now they'll mix and match. It's not a hard and fast thing. And then so Jordan Thomas has always been a guy. When you talk to folks at Georgia, well, you got to get his motor going. I can think of no one better than Travian Robertson to do that. But sometimes that takes a little while. He hadn't played a lot of football. Well, all of a sudden now he's doing well. And he flashed in the scrimmage. And we've heard about Noah Clark, and that train, which is a hard train to stop, hadn't slowed down. And you mentioned Gabe Brownlow Dindy. And then Aiden Harris,
yes,
is kind of on that back on that other side, the small, seems about 6'2.5", 285, the quicker. So there's a bushel of options. And we know from watching Brad Lawing when he coached here, and Brad didn't have this, just to be honest, just to be straight. On that tackle, he didn't have this. He would sneak an Aldrick Fordham out there, or a Byron Gerardo when Byron was a sophomore, and still it was masterful if you really watched it during the game. He'd still reps, and then his frontline guys would be healthy. But it wasn't like he could roll them 6-7 deep. This is a luxury, and because all these guys are pretty good. And then again, like with injuries, you kind of ward that off. If one guy gets hurt, okay, we're not going to lose too much there. But a lot of different body types, a lot of different skill sets in that room. I think the key for Brownlow Dindy is don't play how you are. In other words, like he's such a nice dude and he's got great personality, laid back guy, wants to be a preacher. Hero is Reggie White. He's got to play like Reggie White. He's got to play like the minister of defense, right?
That's right.
And from what I'm told, he's getting there. I talked to somebody who was at spring practice, and they said they watched him the previous year. So this guy's like all of a sudden, the lights come on. It looks like one of those big SEC D tackles you see in other schools, and well, that's what he is. That's what he was recruited to be. So, I think Gabe. I think he and Tomiwa are the starters, but I think you're going to see a lot of these other guys a lot and early and often. And that's kind of like you mentioned with Kelby Collins and some of these other guys too, that are around the 285 mark. If you do get into a pickle at edge, you can always slide to a 3-man front because you have the players to do it. You have a nose. You have 2, 3. And then you have Collins could be a 3-4 end. Tomiwa could be a 3-4 end. Troy Pikes, Aiden Harris. I mean, so you've got those options to mix the fronts. And I think that's good, just inevitably, depending on what happens with injuries throughout the course of the year.
No doubt. And transitioning to linebacker, you've really got 3 starting linebackers in Fred J.R. Johnson, Justin Okoronkwo, who I thought was Carolina's best linebacker last year, and then Sean Murphy, who maybe came on the most towards the end of the season, and J.R. Johnson got off to the quick start. And so really the talk at linebacker has just been, well, who's going to be the 4th and the 5th guy? And it looks like Jamie and Richard, the former walk-on, who's 6'1", 238, number 34 in your programs, number 1 in your heart if you're a former walk-on linebacker like Hank Campbell or Lance Lowry. Yeah. So
not to mention those guys.
Yeah. This could be the next guy. And then 5th, is it going to be AJ Holloway or is it going to be Donovan Darden? And I often find myself asking this question. If Darden is not in the top 4 at linebacker, why would you not want him at defensive end, which if you look at his high school film, the guy just flies around the offensive tackle or the tight end, whoever, because he absolutely can run like a deer, right? So, I mean, I don't, and look, I'm not as in practice, I'm not a D1 defensive coordinator, but I do keep asking myself that question at 6'4", almost 245 pounds. Why would you not give that guy a look when Dylan Stewart's not practicing? And you got all these other guys ahead of him at linebacker.
Yeah, it's interesting. You also could, what I heard about him too is he played all 12 games of special teams last year. So he's the highest rated recruit in that class. I mean, obviously at Shrine Bowl, they moved him linebacker and he looked really good. So, but I heard he just quite wasn't there as far as the starter goes. He's just got to take some time. Linebackers, a lot of mental stuff. You don't want to be taking. I mean, that's what hurt the group last year. I mean, athletically, they're really good, but Fred and Jo both kind of need. They have to be more consistent, but they've both grown up a lot this offseason. Those 2 linebackers and Sean Murphy as well. So I'm with you. I would try it. What I've learned about this staff, they don't normally move guys. They just don't. They don't seem just since Beamer's been here, they just don't. I mean, they made the one move. Dakarian joined a running back, and they played a lot. They moved Luke Doty to receivers. They've done it with some quarterbacks. The only move like on defense I can remember that was, you're doing something fundamentally different. It's not like Gerald Kilgore going from safety to nickel. Is Wendell Gregory, and he quit, left for money, and to play defensive end. Or is that had nothing to do with him leaving? So I don't know. I'd try it, especially if things, let's say Dylan, God forbid, had a relapse or something with his back or banged up, hurt himself again. You need depth. If you're not happy with the depth you have, there could be that. I also think Donovan Darden from a state, because, if you go with a 3-man front, you obviously need another linebacker. Would J.O. be that kind of stand-up pass rusher guy with Murphy and Fred? Would it be Fred? Would you put Donovan Darden in there? There's a lot of questions with that odd front. But I'm with you, man. I loved his film at defensive end as well. I thought this is a guy from D-line heaven with his hand in the dirt. Let him go chase the passer. But, Clayton White evaluates those linebackers. I mean, the linebacker evaluations are a little different, here. And it's worked. I mean, don't get me wrong. At the end of the day, though, man, as long as the 3 are healthy, they're just playing 3. You look at the snap counts the last 2 years. That fourth linebacker, I mean, they really had to work to get Begnali Kamara, a good player, snaps at that fourth spot before he transferred. And that's why he transferred. He wasn't getting to play. And people ask me, why is Sean Murphy starting ahead of J.O.? Because obviously I think J.O. is more talented than Sean Murphy. And I agree with that. I'm like, well, Bam Martin Scott started ahead of Demetrius Knight in half the games. That when they rotate those 3, they kind of got it down to a science. And hopefully it doesn't matter who the third or the fourth one is. You pray for that. But Jamie Richards looked good. I mean, heck, yeah, I think, did he and DJ Black come into the same class? Wouldn't that be something? 2 walk-ons, one from Wade Hampton down, not the generals. That they may both be the other Wade Hampton down in Varnville, and then a kid from Chapman walked on and ended up making an impact. But we'll see what happens. But back to your Darden point, I tend to agree.
All right, so looking into the back end, really you're looking at corner at the backups, because barring injury, Vakari Swain and Judge Collier are going to be the starters. I heard both of those guys really brought it in the first scrimmage, and I've heard so many good things about just the offseason Judge Collier's had, because let's face it, going in the season, he was supposed to be that dude, the next guy at corner. He gets hurt against Virginia Tech. He's out for 4 or 5 weeks. JC, when he came back, he just was not the same guy, but he has really worked extremely hard at the rehab, with the strength and conditioning, the nutrition program. Almost 210 pounds and 42-inch vertical. I think Judge Collier is headed for a big season. The backups, DeMarcus Leach is the only guy who's played, and he came in that Virginia Tech game in Mercedes-Benz Stadium last year. Mostly played on special teams. Then you got Koski Barnes and Tristan Lewis are the next guys up. What are you hearing about the starters and then these younger guys at the cornerback position?
Yeah, Jalua Solomon's still on the team too. Just now, look, just because I didn't hear any feedback on him doesn't mean he's not doing well, because he's healthy and out there competing. Kazi Barnes is probably sort of making a move towards third corner with Leach. They like Leach a lot. And he, when I was talking about Pup Sellers earlier, DeMarcus Leach, same guy. Abbeville led them to the state finals. Tristan Lewis, similar guy. Greenwood quarterback. Tristan Lewis is probably the shocker of all shockers in this class. In a class full of, like, as far as early impact guys, full of surprises. I mean, I didn't see this coming. I thought Noah Clark would be great in time. I thought, I thought Julian Walker may need a year to put on weight. I didn't see some of this coming. I'll be honest. But Tristan Lewis, like, it's spring, Keith, and remember Tamarian Watkins, who crushed me because everybody thought he was going to Carolina. Somebody's like, who would it suck worse not to get in your eyes? Tamarian Watkins. Everyone's like, oh God, and I look like a prophet. I didn't have any kind of intel he was leaving. It's just a gut feeling. I was like, he hadn't committed yet. I don't know, but I really think this kid's good. He's 6'4". He's a beast. He'll fail at A&M at that linebacker spot they're trying to fill because that's not what he. But landing the Greenwood quarterback, and he's listed, Keith, at like 6'4", 180. And it's like, okay, tall, lanky guy, probably like Chris Hatfield or somebody. He needs a year. So I got a text during second spring scrimmage. Tristan Lewis is an absolute monster. It's like, Tristan Lewis. And that Millie Lewis modeling commercial theme jingle came in my head. She's got Millie Lewis. She's got Tristan Lewis. She's got what it takes. And for those that grew up in the upstate, you know what I'm talking about. And I was like, wow, that's good. Well, then lo and behold, he's not 6'4", 185. He's 6'2", 207, the same size as Causey Barnes. Just a thick kid. I heard he's physical, very physical, and he'll knock you into next week. And he's got the hips to play corner. I didn't expect him to play corner either. I thought he's a safety. So that's the kind of the Torian Gray surprise, right? And he's in the mix. Do I think, is he at the level of Barnes or Leach right now? No. The other parts of it are this. Like I said, Jalua Solomon's a wild card still. But then Quaysheed Scott played some corner at Kentucky. Now, I don't want to talk about him playing corner too much, right? Because he had such a great scrimmage at nickel that I believe in my projected depth chart today, I had Kilgore on top. Kilgore was, and I flipped those back now. I think Scott's going to be the guy, although Gerald could overtake it. That's a war too. But he's kind of looking like the guy that, because they got him to play nickel. But he can also slide out the corner. It's not a Brandon Cisse thing. It's almost a reverse Cisse. Cisse was a corner that could play nickel. Scott is a nickel that could play corner if you run into a pinch. But, DeMarcus Leach, I've heard nothing but good things about it. Judge Collier got a few reps in 23 and then came back and was really good in 24. He's got the link. They all do. Right now, though, Leach had a good spring, but Causey Barnes come back with a vengeance. And so that, when you're talking about the third or the fourth, Barnes could be the third as a true freshman. So the depth is, from a youth standpoint, inexperienced, the depth is scary, but not as scary as that 2006 team, right?
And by the end of the season, JC, we were at that Clemson game in 2007, and corners just start dropping like flies. And you have to throw Addison Williams out there as a true freshman to guard Aaron Kelly.
That was the one all week on the radio I talked about. That's the one matchup they have to avoid. Carolina's back. They got the lead. That Carolina team's playing really good football that night, especially on defense. The defense had been down. They're holding them in check. All of a sudden comes number 7. And I'm like, please don't line up in front of this guy. And of course, yes, right there in front of Aaron Kelly. And Addison Williams is a good guy and a really good coach too. But that was just a matchup that I think even he would tell you he did not have much of a chance to win.
No doubt about it. So to the last line of defense at the safety position, Peyton Williams carried the media days, was Joe Morrison defensive MVP of the spring. You know, he is a fifth-year player at the position and a guy that has become a vocal leader back there. 6 foot 214 from Rockwall Heath, which is north in the Dallas Metroplex. Just used to be Rockwall High School, and then Dallas just kept growing further and further out, kind of like here in Austin. And now Rockwall Heath, and they're both loaded. It's not a situation of where one got robbed of their great players. Now you just have two powerhouse programs in the same town instead of one. He, you know, barring an injury, he is going to be the starter. They're counting on him at that one safety position, backed up by Kendall Daniels Jr.,
Good Lord.
a big-time guy, 6'4", 215, maybe closer to 220. Then at the other spot, Shane Beamer last week, he gave David Busey his shout out, but I just don't know how long Busey will be able to hold off Jazavian Currents, who is also 6'4", 215, and arguably the best player to come out of Rock Hill since Stephon Gilmore. I mean, what are your thoughts on the safety position?
Yeah, I think that at the we're not live, are we? Are we live?
We're not live. We're recording. For tomorrow's show.
Sorry, I just anyway, my bad. My dog was barking and distracting me a little bit. But yeah, so I think this. I think that Currents, it may just be a matter of time athletically with him. What I think has to happen though, because Busey's had a pretty good spring or pretty good spring, pretty good fall. I mean, there's a reason he's the starter, but it's going to come down to, like, is he a liability in coverage? Because that's what people say about him. Like, well, he's got to get his coverage going. He's got to get his cover. Got to be able to cover back there. You don't want a situation where you got coaches audibling into one-on-one matchups with him, and it's a touchdown, And can Currents cover better than him at the end of the day? What's the playmaking ability? Is Currents going to be a guy that can make a difference, as opposed to a guy that's just a good starter? And, it's like Ellis Johnson used to say, there's guys that can play in this league, but then there's guys that can make a difference in this league. And is Currents another one of those guys that led his team through the South Carolina high school playoffs that's not really like your normal freshman? So, like, look, I don't want to put a time stamp on it. I want to be fair to David Busey. I want to be fair to Jazavian Currents. But it even if he's not a starter, I think he's going to play a whole lot more than maybe the backup safeties have around here in the past. And he's just too good to keep off the field as far as that goes. But and my understanding is spring, preseason, he's been impressive. I understand why Shane mentioned Busey and everybody and Clayton. I mean, they started mentioning that guy. I think they just kind of picked up on the fact everybody just assumes he's going to get beat out. And that's not true. I mean, he may not. But I think at the very least, he won't play as many snaps, you know what I'm saying, as maybe some starters at safety have in the past, just because they'll have to work Currents in there if he's out there making plays. A lot of people assume Kendall Daniels would do the same to Peyton Williams. It's going to take Kendall Daniels being that much better because Peyton Williams has gotten that much better. We've seen Peyton Williams before in spurts. My understanding is this is that next guy that defensive back wise, you kind of like everybody kind of grumbles and rolls their eyes maybe sometimes. Oh God, here we go. And then his last year, he's a dog. And that's happened over and over.
Kind of like your guy from Burns that was a walk-on.
Jalen Foster got there.
Jalen Foster.
Yeah, dude, Darius Rush got there. O'Donnell Fortune was a different. I mean, we know the 100-yard intercept, but he didn't do. It was like the O'Donnell Fortune in 2024 would knock you into next week, and had 2 pick sixes called back, for penalty, and then he stepped out of bounds. But I mean, he should have had a lot bigger highlight reel that year. I mean, he was good. O'Donnell Fortune was good. Marcellus Dial was kind of a whipping boy as that third corner behind Cam Smith and Darius Rush. And he did have the pick played his best game against Clemson that year. But then in 2023, with the exception of one play against the run that I wish everybody wishes he could have back, he played his way into being a 6th-round pick of the New England Patriots. I mean, just had some injuries, but there's a track record for that. DQ Smith's one I cannot say played better as a senior. I think I don't know.
He didn't have Nick Emanwari back there.
Yeah, a little different, right?
Covering. Yeah.
So yeah, but that's the only one. So we've got like a 6-1 track record there. So
no doubt.
Yeah, I see it playing out that way. And then, I guess Nichols next. I think I mentioned that. I think right now I'm projecting Quaysheed Scott, but I reserve the right to flip that back to Gerald Kilgore. Gerald Kilgore's a really good player. I mean, it's just my understanding is Quaysheed kind of took it to the next level in the scrimmage. Like you kind of like, oh, this kid from Marion's pretty good. And so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think basically you could have co-starters at that position. I think both guys have played enough football to, even though one guy may be getting the starting nod, it's not going to be a fall off when Kilgore goes out there. At safety, the big concern with a true freshman is, the eye discipline. They call it safety for a reason, because if a safety whiffs on a tackle, the band starts playing for the other team, and they start trotting their kicker and PA team onto the field. To me, that's what it's going to boil down to is assignment football, eye discipline, and tackling. Because I do believe Currents is superior in coverage, but those other things are going to have to be there before he's in the starting lineup.
Yeah, and it's so important, I don't remember who I was talking to. It may have been you, maybe on the last podcast episode. And I think we were just talking. David Busey's like as a player, he's like Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart was a really good safety at Georgia. I mean, I think he was about third team all SEC or something like that. But you look at sometimes at that position, you're right. Even Georgia, like the year they won, they had that loaded defense. They had a guy out there at safety that was like a walk-on Dan Kennedy or somebody. It's like, oh, and here's Dan Kennedy. It's like Marla Hooch from A League of Their Own. And there's Marla Hooch. There's Dan Kennedy, the 11th guy, And Kirby and Will are just sitting over there going, hey, that's our guy there. He's always in the right spot, David Busey's fast in a straight line. He'll hit you. He's in the right position, all that. The coverage thing, I think, is a hips thing, kind of because nobody'd ever say he's a corner, right? Because there's the hips. And so I think that's it. I think the less mistakes guys like Currents make, the more I think he'll play, because you're just not going to risk it. There's a reason they call it safety.
That's right.
It's like, this is the safety. You're safe this is for safety purposes. You never use it until you have to. Right.
That's right. That's right. So, JC, there's a 3-man battle for place kickers. We wind it down here. Upton Bellenfant is the only guy that's ever kicked a field goal in a game. Max Kelly was the kickoff guy last year for South Carolina. And then Malik Orson comes in the summer from Southeast Missouri, but he redshirted, so he didn't play. I personally think Shane Beamer and Matthew Smiley are going to take this thing down to the last week. And it may be even after Beamer's press conference on Tuesday before the first game before they name a starter at that position.
Yeah, and we've seen it done like that before. I mean, we didn't even know last year. And then what's his name walked out, was the first out in Atlanta, I think. When did we think? I don't. But look, sometimes you get really worried about these kickers, and they go out and have a fantastic year, and it's November, and you're not worried about the kickers anymore. Sometimes you're not worried about the kickers, and then you're like, what the heck's wrong with our kicker in midway through? I think like a lot of positions, there's an overemphasis on it because, look, the last two, Herrera and
William Joyce
from Spartan High,
who was a punter.
Yeah.
Neither one of those guys had ever kicked a college field goal in their lives. And you could be going 3 years in a row if Max Kelly wins this job with a guy that's never attempted a field goal on the collegiate level.
Yeah. Now, Max Kelly's a scholarship guy. I like, you bring those guys in to win the job. You don't scholarship a kicker unless he wins it. So that's a little different. But yeah, I mean, and look, I think William Joyce and Alex Herrera, if this were 2009 or 15 or 18 or whenever, perfectly fine. But now you look around college, there's guys booming it from 50. I don't know what happened. Because I kind of pushed back against the Herrera. I was like, they're like, if we had a kicker, you'd have beaten Alabama. I was like, it's a 53-yard field goal. Nobody ever makes that. You're wrong. Look around. And I started looking around. I was like, oh my God, that kid from Virginia Tech I think he's from Spartanburg too. Last year, nailed the 54-yarder in the dome against Carolina. I mean, other schools have found a way to do it. And, since Mitch Jeter left, and Beamer didn't recruit him, I mean, they've kind of had, some issues finding a stud, and you don't always get a stud, but,
Herrera blew the 48-yarder that would have sent the LSU game to overtime.
Yeah, it was a miss. Yeah. So I think the fans are like a little overly concerned about it based on what's happened the last 2 years. And you can't hold that against these guys. What you can hold against these guys, Upton Bellenfant has no excuse. Upton Bellenfant played for Pete Limbo at Buffalo, 2 years ago.
Was it Alabama with Nick Saban?
Yeah, it was Alabama, 18 for 21. Didn't have a whole lot of long attempts, but, was still 18 for 21, didn't miss an extra point. He's 6 for 7 last year at Texas Tech. And the whole issue with him since he's been at Carolina, he's just missing. Now, some guys get it blocked in scrimmage situations, which I think maybe says a lot about the athletes Carolina has on special teams. I hope Neff Jiwa got it, but I don't think he did. My dream. I think Beamer's picking up what I'm putting down about Neff Jiwa on the field goal block team. And I think he's thinking about the punt block team too. But that's beside the point. But and Max kind of over the summer kind of became the favorite. Max does have a strong leg, but, like talking to somebody who worked with these guys off campus during the spring, it's just consistency. I mean, it's just consistency. And it doesn't make much sense right now with especially with Bellenfant. They basically signed him so he could come in and compete for the job. And they talked to Pete Limbo about him. That's what Beamer talks to everybody about everybody, And so that to me was the biggest negative surprise of spring, and continues to be that Upton Bellenfant didn't just, clearly take the job. That's just and maybe there's still a chance, I mean, it's like putting or free throw shooting. Sometimes you just snap out of. Parker White was 10 for 20 1 year, man. I mean, it ended up being just fine. He gained the unshakable faith of William Larry Muschamp. Oh, it's 58 yards. Send Parker out there. All right.
Yeah, that was the Georgia game.
Yeah, I do.
Will Muschamp and Kirby Smart in 2019 set the sport back about 100 years in
That's
the
unbelievable.
management of the last 2 minutes. It's actually like a 59-yarder.
Yeah.
And you had my guy from Fort Dorchester 5 at quarterback who was a runner. It was 4th and 5. I'm probably going with him, but so here's my hopefully Ryan Suckup, he was our kickoff man as a freshman. Then as a sophomore, we put him in at field goal kicker. Oh, Ryan, he could boot him through the uprights. Max Kelly, 6'2", 225, strong leg, freshman, kickoff guy, sophomore year, scholarship guy, becomes the guy and knocks him between the uprights.
Yeah, me too. And that would be ideal. And I'll say this as well. Something about those kicking competitions under Spurrier. And Spurrier's first year, Josh Brown was the kicker. It wasn't another scholarship guy from Maryland. He hit the one at Tennessee, but and Spurrier worked with the kickers himself. He kicked and come on now, hit this.
There's a big correlation with golf and with the head ball.
Exactly. And Suckup was one of the best in program history. And so, man, it could work out. It's just I think it gets, like a lot of things, because of the recent past, it gets magnified a little bit. That said, if you ask me, do I think these guys have done a good job and they'll be just fine? No, there's a lot of work to do with these guys. They need to come on, man. They need to, it's time for somebody to get serious and win it. That doesn't mean it won't work out, at the end. So we'll see.
All right, JC, great stuff, man. I can't thank you enough for being with us. Tell us what you got coming up on thebigspur.com at Gamecock Central with On 3 and Rivals now, and with Inside the Gamecocks this week.
Absolutely. Well, it's we're recording this, so this will air Tuesday, August 18th. So after that's done, we have an exclusive interview with head coach Shane Beamer. Both we have articles up on the site for members, but you can also listen to that on YouTube and on our podcast on Inside the Gamecocks. Taped that this morning. It releases Monday night. Also, I think we've got 6 different unique. They don't say the same thing over and over. They're different aspects. So the scrimmage reports from myself, Chris Mitchell, and Wes Clark.
There you go.
Chris Clark and Wes Mitchell and Jamie Bradford all have, deets on the scrimmage, moving forward, the injury stuff. Jack Veltri has a great exclusive interview up with Shed Surratt. Plus, our message board's getting bigger and badder every day, so you can come shoot the breeze with me and some of my friends that came with me over to the Insiders Forum. And then on ITG this week, we're back in football season mode. Preston Thorne on Tuesday. That would be later today. Also Wednesdays, we have David Cloninger, Chris Clark, both in Perry Orth on Thursdays, John Strickland and Michael Flynn on Fridays, as we continue to move toward the opener on September 5th.
All right, man. Great stuff. As always, JC, thanks for being with us, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Thanks, Keith. Great to be with you guys.
All right, that was my interview yesterday afternoon with JC Shurburtt. The chatter continues on Nasira Pryor, the point guard transfer, 5th-year player from Sacred Heart and Texas A&M. We will see if that comes to fruition, and we will continue with Gamecock football and talking Gamecocks tonight. For our VIP patrons is the Garnet and Black Town Hall. That's at 8 o'clock Eastern. I think we're going to end up moving that sucker to Sunday nights during football season so everybody can weigh in and fire off together. The Garnet and Black Town Hall is an interactive Zoom call on Zoom for our VIP subscribers on Patreon. We put that up. I'll be putting that up shortly. That'll be tonight at 8 p.m. And then Sunday, September the 6th, the Garnet and Black Town Hall will make its debut on Sunday night so everyone can chime in. It's kind of like going down to your local sports bar and hanging out with all your Gamecock buddies and talking about the game. So we've been doing it since 2019. Obviously COVID happened and nobody had anywhere to go and everybody was at home and everybody was tuned in. Everybody was in the room on the Zoom call because there was nothing else to do, and it's kind of become like a family, like my Gamecock family. So can't wait for that. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm thinking about moving Gamecock Pod Live to Monday during football season so we can fire off to start the week instead of Wednesday after everybody's talked about it and Shane Beamer's already talking about the next opponent. So things are in the works at Gamecock Pod and Gamecock Pod Live, our family of podcast. Also on Sunday mornings during football season, the morning after that podcast and the Garnet and Black Town Hall are our most popular features, and well, we could be venturing into a new YouTube and podcasting space. Announcement to come probably a little after Labor Day on that, so we'll let you know. You can find this podcast. You can become an annual VIP subscriber. Sign up on September the 1st. You won't be charged until October of 2027. You'll essentially get 12 months for the price of 9. Okay, all annual VIP subscribers get 2 months free. Sign up on the 1st of the month. You don't get charged for 13 months. You can become a monthly VIP. You can become a trial subscriber and try it out for a week, no charge. Join us for the Garnet and Black Town Hall. Join us during football season for the morning after and the Garnet and Black Town Hall on Sundays after all the college football games have been played. So that will do it for me until next week. God bless. Go Gamecocks. And it will be here before you know it. And we'll be back next week talking all things Gamecocks. Until then, I am out of here.